Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. This is Ray from the Orange County Hadoop User Group. The title of the webinar is Why You Should Run Hadoop In-House. And we have Alex Lesser here with us today. He's from PSSC Labs, one of our sponsors. He's the Vice President of Sales. I'm going to let him take the floor in a minute. I just want to do some quick logistics with everybody. So what I'm going to do here is talk about the GoToWebinar control panel. So as you can see on your control panel, all of you in the audience, there's an orange button with an arrow on it. And if you click that, it'll maximize or minimize your control panel in a toggle-like fashion. So once you have it maximized, you can select audio type. Most people are going to use microphone and speakers mode. You can also call in with your telephone if you're in the United States. I'd recommend closing other applications that may take bandwidth, things like Skype, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Gmail, and then you can make my computer screen full screen if you like to see the fonts as large as possible. And try to use headphones if you have them. It'll make it easier to hear the voice of myself and the presenter, Alex. So if you look in the lower right-hand corner of my screen, you'll see a questions box. If you have questions for Alex during the webinar, go ahead and type them into the questions box, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and we'll answer all your questions. So a little bit about myself. My name is Ray DiGiacomo Jr., President of the Orange County Hadoop User Group, also known as OC Hug. I'm a Master R Trainer and a Healthcare Predictive Analytics Consultant. You can join the Orange County Hadoop User Group on meetup.com if you have not already. And then you'll get automatic invites to our upcoming events and be able to network with people as well. So the webinar is being recorded now, and we're going to post the recording to YouTube. And you should get an email sometime today with the URL to that recording, which will be on the YouTube page of PSSC Labs. And that should be up within the next 7 days. We'll probably get it up sooner than that, but I'll just say 7 days to be safe here. So what I'm going to do now is turn over controls to Alex Lesser, who is the Vice President of Sales at PSSC Labs. What I'm going to do is change presenter to Alex. So Alex, you now have presentation controls. Go ahead and show your screen. Great, I can see your screen and I can see your PowerPoints, and then you can just put them in the full screen mode and go ahead and introduce yourself, and you have the floor now.
Great, thank you so much, Ray, and thank you everybody for attending the webinar. I appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to leave the webinar with a little more information to help all of you make your decision about how to best implement a Hadoop practice for your organization. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. So what I'd like to go over today is a discussion of what seems to be a growing debate as Hadoop and other big data analytics platforms become more available, is running the application in-house or using a cloud service like Amazon EC2. So let's take a look at Hadoop from 10,000 feet. What do we know at this point? So Hadoop, HBase, other big data analytics platforms are becoming more and more critical for business intelligence. Everywhere you look, there's new information, new articles, some exciting news. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the recent New York Times article about Obama's team that helped him get reelected, but essentially it did leverage some data scientists to really help him in his recent re-election campaign. What else do we know? We know that there is definitely a lack of expertise at this point from a hardware, software application standpoint, limiting the implementation of these emerging applications and technologies. Obviously, over time, that lack of expertise will become less and less, and we will become more efficient at running these different big data analytics platforms. Today, I would say deploying in the cloud is viewed as the easiest entry point, but I do want to point out the story does not end here. And this presentation will examine this exact issue as we go forward. The rent versus buy debate is, the more that I analyzed it, I found that it's really not so dissimilar to the home ownership versus renting an apartment. There's same sort of factors are involved, same sort of decision making is involved. Controlling your own environment compared to basically living under somebody else's roof and playing by their rules. Investment in a property versus, say, the operational expense of just renting and writing a monthly check and seeing that money essentially disappear. There are, of course, tax implications as well in home ownership, as well as in investing in your own infrastructure, although it may be not as great as some people think. Organizations must determine when it is best to rent time on a third-party cloud resource or invest in their own hardware infrastructure. Very often we come across situations and people ask, is there a tipping point where it's an obvious decision to, say, move off of a cloud and to begin to invest in your own hardware infrastructure? Or could organizations utilize both types of platforms? And this is a question we will analyze and evaluate as we go through the presentation. We do believe that different use case scenarios could lead to very different usage models. And again, that will be brought up moving forward. To the cloud. So let's examine the most prevalent cloud service today, Amazon EC2. This is not to say that this is the only one, but this seems to be the one that we hear most often. What Amazon wants you to believe. Amazon has their own spin on this as to why using their service makes the most sense for companies. What they want you to believe is you have complete control of the server instance, providing performance necessary to run applications efficiently. Amazon argues that higher reliability with near 100% uptime is part of their business model. They also encourage you to believe that cost savings are available through cloud computing. They're a big fan of the only pay for what you use pricing model, and of course the scale of Amazon's services is so vast that they're able to pass along your total expense, or at least that's what they present to the user. Security also through their virtual private cloud service, they're saying is a big selling point, and that you should feel secure using their service. And of course, I think the biggest argument Amazon makes is greater flexibility deploying cloud instances. Simply click a button, spin up, and you're off and running. This is all information that's readily available on Amazon's website, and there is the link to it at the bottom. What Amazon does not want you to know. So I think what we could do is take each of those points in the previous slide and dig a little bit deeper, so we all have a clearer picture of really what is the reality versus what is the marketing pitch. Let's begin by examining the performance on Amazon. Obviously, virtual cores do not offer nearly the same level of application performance as real cores. Anybody who has played with virtual cores, virtualization, understands that when you're running on virtual cores, you're not getting access to the same system resources. Amazon, when you do run instances, typically you are just running on virtual cores. If you do want dedicated cores, the cost is exponentially higher. There are latency issues due to dispersed server locations. Servers are dispersed all over the US. Even if you have your own virtual private cloud, potentially you could have servers on the East Coast, servers on the West Coast, and you'd have to deal with those latency issues. Again, Amazon does have a solution for this, but it is more money. Amazon instances not custom configured for specific applications. Basically, you have access to these machines that Amazon buys in bulk, but that doesn't mean that it is necessarily the best fit for your specific needs. Many types of instances are available, but they may not be the right fit for your specific needs. Transferring data in and out of Amazon, not considered optimal speed. Obviously, we have a lot of limitations there with bandwidth and accessibility. Let's now examine the argument of reliability on Amazon. Many conversations I've had with people, the story is constantly the same. Machines consistently and randomly drop out. Developers are constantly forced to find workarounds. Brownouts, not even blackouts, are very, very common and can be caused by a number of different factors. One of these factors I like to call the angry neighbor scenario, where you're on a machine running virtual cores, same person's on the same machine, they happen to start flooding the machine, and you have absolutely no idea why your application performance went to 0, and you have absolutely no control of how to stop it from happening. That's really, I think, one of the biggest issues with Amazon services. You examine it, is there's sort of lack of control and lack of understanding and clarity as to what's going on. Examination of cost. I did a preliminary pricing for one of my end users, sort of examining what would be the cost of running an application like Hadoop in Amazon's cloud, and I was shocked actually at some of the pricing that I came up with. Even with Amazon promoting this pay for what you use model and the economies of scale, I still found it to be exponentially higher than I could imagine. What I did was I basically said if I wanted to run about 50 terabytes on Amazon's, they call it the HS1.8x large instance, which they promote as their Hadoop friendly instance, and that's 48 terabytes of storage. I did the number of instances of 10, so a half a petabyte, 100% utilization, and I was coming up with a monthly price of, as you can see here, over $40,000. Amortize that over the course of the year, and you're at $500,000 just for the year. Obviously, this was sort of back of the envelope. If you wanted to use less than this, there would be different pricing. I'm certain Amazon also does offer discounts, but even then, I still think the pricing of Amazon is really out of line when you compare to sort of what your own infrastructure would cost. And we'll get into that further down the road here. And I want to point out that this was not just myself figuring this out. There are many, many other companies who have done their own sort of cost analysis. There's a company by the name of Deep Value who basically found that their EC2 service was nearly 400% more expensive than running an internal cluster. Here's the link to it. Again, if you do a quick Google search, I'm sure you could find any number of people coming to the same conclusion that I did. Security. Being so big does mean Amazon is a big target. I think less than 12 months ago, I think there was a big issue with security on Amazon. As we also know, recently with the whole Prism situation, Amazon could potentially be contacted by the government to share any information that they basically see fit, and you have absolutely no control over that. That could really affect your business, your customer data, your sense of security. In my view, by using Amazon, you are actually giving up security standards because you are not the person making the security rules. You're relying on Amazon, and you are asking them to basically protect you. They have their own set of interests, as well as maybe to some degree yours, but clearly it's not going to be the same as if it's you with full control protecting your data. Let's examine some different use case scenarios and determine where then running on the cloud would make sense versus now examining where building your own infrastructure would make the most sense. So when does a cloud make sense? So my view is running jobs infrequently is a perfect model for cloud computing. You're not constantly submitting, you're not constantly looking for answers. It's, hey, I've just got one quick job I've got to run and get it done with. Jobs that do not require large amounts of computing power or storage also, I think, make perfect sense on the cloud. Jobs that do not require long runs, we're talking minutes, not days and months, also do make sense to run on the cloud. Jobs that can be run on any hardware platform. Again, we discussed that Amazon is not really custom configuring boxes for specific applications. They're saying, hey, this is a general computing platform, do with it as you will. Performance, these types of jobs, then I would argue where these are not performance critical jobs. For example, you're not looking for real-time results. Another scenario where running on a cloud makes sense is your growth is not predictable or consistent. So you don't know what 1 month is going to be versus the next month. You don't know how much data is going to be generated. You don't really know how many users are going to be on. It's sort of, hey, I'm just going to throw this out there and see what happens. And your month-by-month standards tend to be very different. Digging a little bit deeper, I sort of took the information from the previous slide and then said, okay, well, what types of businesses would this make sense? Business-to-consumer models, I think, is a good argument for cloud. System goes down, who cares? There's no paying customer necessarily to answer to. You can get back to them whenever you want. You're not having, heads of corporations come after you and say, I need results and I need answers and I need to have somebody tell me when my application and my deliverable is going to be submitted. Startup companies with limited capital, again, unpredictable growth, those are very good companies to sort of start off in the cloud. Simple businesses with limited technical resources, and businesses with limited technical needs, I think, are also make sense for starting off in the cloud. When does bare metal make sense? Now we're going to begin to examine the idea of your own in-house infrastructure. So let's first begin by contrasting when running a cloud makes sense versus running on bare metal makes sense. So if you're continuously running jobs, running on the in-house, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, you saw the expenses of Amazon. Imagine that over the course, if you do realize 100% utilization, the costs become exorbitant. If you're solving complex problems, jobs requiring large amounts of computing power, I think do not really run that well on Amazon or other cloud resources. You would want your own in-house computing resources to ensure that you have the right computing platform offering the right level of performance and reliability. When your jobs take weeks and months, also a good idea to run in-house. Again, we just look at the cost differences. You have a predictable usage model, your predictable growth model, so you know, hey, I'm going to have this amount of users, I'm generating this much data, it's a consistent stream, and it's a growing stream. Data sets continue to expand, requiring more computing power. Certainly spinning up instances on Amazon is definitely an advantage, but when you compare that with the cost, I think then you begin to understand that maybe there are other options like running bare metal, and that would make a lot more sense. Jobs requiring specific hardware platforms, this narrows down a little bit more to the idea of Amazon not being a custom-built platform for applications. With running your own hardware in-house, you are actually able to determine the amount of memory, the amount of storage, the processing power, the types of storage, the amount of storage, the types of network, etc. Continuing on to that, let's look at the different business models. Here, I think business-to-business models are much more effectively run using in-house resources. Established business with established usage model and predictable growth also are really more effective running on in-house resources. Again, back to the business model versus business to consumer. Here in this case, you would have somebody coming down and saying, I need an answer why my data is not showing up or why are the machines down. Here you could give a legitimate and effective and immediate answer to those types of questions. Could a combination of cloud and bare metal make sense? We are asked this quite a bit, and I tend to believe actually there are two answers. There is a yes and there is a no. I don't think it is really an all or one. Every organization will have to evaluate when the answer is yes and when the answer is no. It kind of goes back to that tipping point discussion that we had earlier. The combination of a bare metal and in-house infrastructure and some cloud resources could make sense if you know that you have a predictable use. You say, I know I'm going to be using this much computing resources, I'll bring that in-house. Therefore, if I go beyond those resources, now I could use an Amazon cloud and just sort of burst those jobs to the cloud, and you'll find that your cost over time become much, much less dependent upon Amazon's pricing model. Standardized traffic, bursting to the cloud, those are sort of that I think is really what I think many companies will sort of begin with as they sort of evolve out of using Amazon's resources and saying, hey, I want to start trying things in-house. I don't think, in our experience, we haven't had anybody do a complete shift. There always tends to be some vestige of other Amazon instances still available. If the answer is no, probably that is because the cost of Amazon is too great. We had a company, actually one of our end users was spending nearly $1 million on EC2 before investing in their own infrastructure. So obviously they made a decision that that money could be much, much better spent. That company now, they have over 5,500 servers dispersed worldwide, and they came to us and they said, our operating expense of these servers versus Amazon is about 30% or less. So you can see the tremendous amount of savings that they had by investing in their own hardware. Other companies may have performance metrics that are key drivers to owning infrastructure. If you do have performance numbers that you have to meet, you have deliverables that have to be on time, you will need to invest in your own infrastructure. You cannot be dependent upon running instances. On Amazon, customer requirements for maintaining service and security levels also are a factor for companies who make a decision to shift away from Amazon and building their own infrastructure. I think as we move forward, the attacks on Amazon will become more, the security holes will become more prevalent, and companies will begin to want to safeguard their information to make sure that they are not delivering any critical business data without them knowing it. Amazon, even if there is a hack into Amazon, it's up to them to even tell you whether or not it's happening, right? So I do think that there are a lot of pitfalls there. So now let's talk about running Hadoop, and specifically on Amazon versus bare metal, your own infrastructure. What do we know about Hadoop? Requires large amounts of data storage. We know that. I don't really know how many other applications in the recent memory have really been so dependent upon large storage sizes as Hadoop. Require large processing power. We have evolved out of a high-performance computing background, and we could see where Hadoop actually sort of leverages that technology combined with the data storage to offer a really, really unique platform. Can require specific configurations for performance. I've yet to come across anybody who says, my model is exactly like this person's model, I need exactly that. Everybody seems to have their own take on the right platform for Hadoop. Data sets typically expanding over time. Again, most people that I've seen with Hadoop, they start off with a small test cluster. The next year follows, they buy a slightly larger cluster and a larger cluster, and they can begin to add and add and add up. The next thing you know, they've got well over a petabyte of storage. Real-time analysis becoming more common. I think this is actually one of the biggest growth areas for Hadoop is going to be the real-time analysis. And we'll see over time how prevalent that becomes. Cost analysis. We already discussed the fees of Amazon and the exorbitant expenditures seen by myself as well as other companies. Performance analysis of Hadoop on EC2. You have the speed of the virtual cores versus the real cores to consider. We have the issues related to importing and exporting data. We also have reliability issues, as we discussed, brownouts, angry neighbor syndrome. Those are all things that are essentially out of your control and can really hinder performance of Hadoop on EC2. Also, the security issues we addressed as well, sharing your customers' data, maybe with or without you even knowing it. Building your own cluster. thought here would be a good time to sort of introduce PSSC so you kind of get a framework of where we're coming from and why we believe that we are experts in delivering these types of platforms. We've been in business for 26 years, delivering turnkey high-performance computing solutions. We are a true tier one manufacturer, focusing on unique platforms for advanced applications. Our platforms are engineered for individual needs and budget. Our experience, we are a MapR and Cloudera partner, delivered several turnkey Hadoop clusters ranging in size from small 50 terabytes to 2+ petabytes. And everything in between. We have customers in the government space, in the education space, in the Fortune 500 space, in the engineering space, and the more that we become involved in the big data environment, the more we're learning about customers' needs and customer requirements. And as I mentioned before, I've yet to come across anybody who says, my needs are exactly the same as this customer. Everybody's got a unique spin on this at this point. Building your Hadoop cluster, what is necessary? There's obviously a number of questions that you need to ask yourself when you begin the process of building a cluster, and in fact, I kind of think that this is a presentation in itself, but let's quickly sort of just go over some of the key decisions, key questions to ask yourself as you start thinking about building a Hadoop cluster. What hardware do I need? Evaluation of storage capacity is probably where most people start. Very often people will say, hey, I need half a petabyte of storage for Hadoop, and that's sort of all that they give us, and then we're basically asked to design everything else around it. There are many people who are evaluating different network topologies, amounts of memory, and processor performance to determine what is the best fit. We are still learning and working with our partners to help our customers understand when it makes sense to have 64 gigs of memory, 128 gigs of memory, 256 gigs of memory, etc. 10 gig networking versus just channel bonded gigi networking, different processor configurations as well. So as we, again, move forward in this environment, we are learning just as much as I think anybody else, but it is an exciting place to be, I will say. Software, which operating system should I use? Most people tend to look at a CentOS platform. Others may need a commercial version of Red Hat, depending on their corporate requirements. Which Hadoop distribution should I use? You can go open source, you can go commercial, MapR, Cloudera, Apache, Hortonworks. There's a variety of them out there. I think even Intel has one. So I do think that each of these different offerings has their own benefits, and I think that you would need to evaluate by speaking with the application developer what works best for your specific needs. Which database environment should be using? Which cluster management utility do I need? How am I going to manage the system? Obviously people do not want to spend their jobs managing hardware. They want to actually accomplish and get their work done. We believe actually we do have a nice solution for that. Other considerations: facility power and cooling, how many circuits, how much air conditioning, access to internet, data transfer speeds. These are all questions you should be asking yourself as you begin to build out your Hadoop cluster. So right sizing. So digging a little bit deeper, storage capacity, again, being, I think, maybe the most critical piece of information people ask themselves when they start this process. You have to understand that typically with Hadoop, you're running in triplicate. So even though you may spec out, say, a half a petabyte of storage, if you are running in triplicate, that may get whittled down to well under 200 terabytes. That does bring up the idea of long-term storage versus accessible storage. I think that you should consider long-term storage for your data warehouse needs, maybe slightly different and maybe sit outside of the Hadoop cluster. For the actual accessible storage, maybe you should be looking at smaller amounts and the ability to transfer that data in and out of the long-term storage very quickly. The facility, power and cooling, the size of the cluster will determine your power and cooling needs. I think that's really where people, I think, maybe don't understand. Just going into a data center and saying, I have this much storage really isn't necessarily the answer. I think people need to look at actual power draw of the system, and that really could have a great effect on their overall operating cost. software, open source versus commercial, as we discussed, many different options, and then you have to evaluate the benefits of support of a commercial versus the cost of those commercial applications. I do think that there is tremendous value in working with companies like MapR because they can help you maybe get to answers faster than you could on your own. Networking speed, you have your internal cluster network, and then you have your external, and what are the costs involved for those types of network speeds. Cost analysis. Most people, when they begin evaluating, they come and they speak to us, they sort of have a general question is, how much is a starter Hadoop cluster? We believe, based on our knowledge, you can get away with about a $35,000 budget to begin with to build your own system. We have a CloudRacks platform that has a complete turnkey, truly plug-and-play solution. As you can see here, it includes about 150 terabytes of space, 50 terabytes when running in triplicate. That's amazingly not enough, not a tremendous amount in Hadoop, but I think it's a good place to start. It includes all necessary rack and network infrastructure and installation of different software packages, including the operating system, the Hadoop distribution of your choice, as well as our Hawkeye cluster management package. Nice thing about this platform is it's very expandable. So you could begin at this level, and then you could grow it over time by simply adding more storage nodes, data nodes. How much are the monthly costs? There's a couple different options here. Hosting in your own facility, which I do encourage people to do for such a small system. Really, you just need a couple of dedicated circuits, which are very common, and about a half a ton of dedicated HVAC. That's not that much. You could actually go to Costco and buy a simple air conditioner for a few $100s and install it, and it should be able to run in your environment. I would estimate then the cost to run something like this in your own at $200 to $400 per month maximum. In fact, it may in fact be much, much less. Option 2, hosting in a third-party data center. If you did want to reach out to one of those companies, there are plenty in the Orange County area or LA area, a range of different costs. For our CloudRack starter system, you're really only talking about 6 of dedicated rack space. Most times when you are working with data center, they almost sell it on a full rack basis. But you could talk to them, and they may be able to partition out a shared rack. Typically, I found a full rack is anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500, depending on location, and that would include the air conditioning, the power. Typically, you are then needing to only pay for data transfer in, out, or one way. Another question that I think many people come to us and ask is, do they need a dedicated system administrator? And the answer is no. This is really, the CloudRacks is a very, very basic system. You're talking about basically 5 servers. All you really need to do is understand how to run Hadoop, how to access the machines, and that's really it. We have customers ranging in size all the way to several thousand nodes, and they really don't have dedicated admins as well. They're basically scientists who are just running their jobs on the machine. So the benefits of building your own cluster, performance, I think is critical to understand the benefits of performance. You're running on the bare metal, not virtual cores. Dedicated equipment will definitely lead to greater performance. You can then work with companies like a MapR to tune performance for your specific jobs. Compare that to Amazon with their brownouts, their angry neighbor syndrome, the latency issues, and I think you would probably see that you're getting nearly double the performance on your own infrastructure. Security, setting up your own security updates is critical. Obviously, nobody really wants to have anything out there online where people can easily log in and access the machine. So setting up your own security updates, I think, is critical for success in any project, whether it's Hadoop or anything else. Reliability, also key concern. Our own experience having delivered, nearly 2,000 clusters and tens of thousands of servers out there around the world. We're talking a field component failure level less than 0.01%, and that really is a result of extensive testing and integration process. I think that's the key of why people don't need a dedicated system administrator, because once hardware is deployed, the amount of actual time and effort needed to maintain the hardware is essentially zero on a monthly basis. There obviously may be a need to replace a piece of memory or a hard drive over time, but it is not something that becomes a burden for most people. And a few closing thoughts, and then we'll open up the discussion for any questions. Just want to go over a couple of common misconceptions that we find when we talk to people. Building and maintaining own infrastructure is difficult and expensive. As we pointed out with the previous slides, nothing really could be further from the truth. It is very easy to deploy fully integrated solutions worldwide. We've been doing out of our Orange County headquarters for well over a decade at this point. I think we've shipped to 35 countries now. So certainly, it's not anything that is so incredibly difficult that it can't be done. Operating expense is approximately less than 0.5% of the total system cost per month. That would include all of your power, all your cooling, all your housing, and of course any system administration. So you're not talking a tremendous overhead of running and building your own infrastructure. In our view, there really is therefore no need for dedicated IT personnel. I think I mentioned, there is a company out there that we work with. They've got over 5,500 servers located worldwide, I think in 5 different data centers dispersed around the world, and they've only added 1 dedicated IT personnel. So certainly it's something that most people can do, and I don't think most people are looking at deploying a system of this size at this point. Other considerations, information technology is a core value. I think the successful companies with strong IT knowledge are the ones that will succeed as we move forward here. Essentially, in my view, this is what Amazon has done. They had a very strong ability to develop and deliver a platform, and they basically said, now we can monetize and sell this. And we're all, everybody else is sort of, people are using it, said, hey, that's great. But they doing it at a great expense, and essentially paying for Amazon's resources too. We talked about the flexibility of Amazon and their the ability to spin up servers. What I find with most companies, if they do a little bit of pre-planning, there is a monthly rollout of servers that can be done where you say, hey, every month I need 2 servers, I need 5 servers, I need 10 servers, and it becomes just a very standard thing, and then you can meet those expanding needs, and you can reduce your cost of sort of paying for those instances on the fly. Obviously, when you look at the cost involved, you're talking a few $1,000s for a server that lasts 3 years versus paying nearly 5 times that much over the life of a 3-year period. So I think that most companies, when they do a cost analysis, can see the benefits. Leasing equipment is an option to be considered as well in order to offset large upfront costs. And in many ways, leasing is sort of the answer to cloud resources. For the same amount of monthly fees, you basically are getting your own hardware infrastructure, but you're paying it off in a much quicker time, and you're actually getting the use, the exclusive use of the asset. And I believe that's my presentation. That's it. Here is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions at all. At this point, I'm happy to turn it back over to Ray and answer any questions that you guys may have.
Thank you, Alex. That was a great presentation. And we're going to have a question and answer period. So for those of you who came to the webinar a little late, there is a GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen, and there's an orange button on it with an arrow. If you click that button, it'll maximize and minimize your control panel. And then you'll see a box in there that says questions, either questions or chat. And you can send questions to Alex through that window, and I'll basically verbally read them to Alex. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is start off with some questions here for Alex. So okay, Alex, for the Hadoop starter cluster, what type of power cooling do I need?
Good question. So I think I pointed out, really, if you just had 2 dedicated 20 amp 110 volt circuits in your facility, which most people do have, it would be, that's enough power. In terms of cooling, again, about a half a ton of dedicated air conditioning, which may sound like a lot, but in reality, it's not that much at all. Again, going to a Costco or something, you would be able to find sort of a wall-mounted HVAC unit that I think would actually support up to well over 1 ton of air conditioning, and they're just a few $100s.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. Do you pre-install the Cloudera and MapR software packages?
Yes, we can. If you specified what you would like on your Cloud Rack system or any other package, we certainly could. Yes.
Okay. And how?
And we are.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to point out, we are a MapR and Cloudera partner, and we have been working very closely with MapR in particular here because we have such good contacts in the Orange County area.
Okay. How scalable are your solutions?
Extremely scalable. So we can, again, take that starter system and scale it up to, well over a petabyte if that's what people are looking to do, simply by adding more nodes with more storage.
Okay. So here's another question. I'm working on a budgetary proposal for my company to begin investigating a Hadoop solution. Do you offer custom configurations for specific storage amounts and budgets?
Yes, absolutely. That's basically exactly what we do. So if you had a proposal that you're trying to put together, we certainly would be very happy to help you come up with some different ideas and suggestions. I'm actually working on one right now for somebody in the area.
Okay. And here's another question. Is Cloud Racks also available with Cloudera?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Both either Cloudera or MapR, whatever people want, or the open source Apache version.
Okay. So everybody in the audience, if you have any more questions, go ahead and send them through the questions window. I'll wait another 20 seconds or so for additional questions, and then we can go ahead and start to close down the webinar. While they're thinking about their questions, Alex, would you like to make an announcement about the sales position at PSSC Labs?
Yes. Oh, yeah. So we are looking for two positions, actually, a inside sales representative to help with our inbound opportunities, as well as an outside sales representative focusing primarily on the big data Hadoop market space. We really believe we have some very unique products that are a great fit for this growing and exciting market.
Great. Okay, and this webinar is currently being recorded for all of you in the audience, and we're going to go put it on YouTube within the next week, and you should get an email automatically from Citrix GoToWebinar software pointing you to that location. So that'll be up soon, and you can refer your friends to it if you like. I have another question here. So it says, is $35,000, I'm assuming it's $35,000 is for 5, does it mean $21,000 for 3? Can you make sense of that, Alex?
Yeah, so you could do less, but there are certain infrastructure costs in the Cloud Racks that sort of brought that price up. We have the cost of a name node. You have the cost of the rack itself, the physical rack of the network. Certainly, if you are working in the $20,000 budget range, we can certainly come up with a solution specifically for that. But it's not a sort of a direct $7,000 per node price. There are other costs involved there.
Sure, sure. Okay. So looks like there are no more questions from the audience. And if you do have a question, and another one coming in here. One more question here. Okay, here's a question. I am a Java developer and interested in Hadoop. Do you guys have any career opportunities in regards to Java or J2EE?
Right now, from a technical standpoint, we're doing okay, but certainly if you'd like to send me your application and your resume, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it.
Sure. So you can reply with your resume to the automatic email that will come from Citrix GoToWebinar sometime today. Go ahead and reply your resume to that, and I'll make sure it gets to Alex. So thank you for your interest in PSSC Labs. Okay, so not seeing any more questions here. And if you have a question and you want to ask it privately, just respond to the automatic email that everyone in the audience will get from the GoToWebinar software. And then we can funnel your questions to Alex in a more private setting. And let us know if you need anything else. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. I'm Ray with the Orange County Hadoop User Group. We're going to have an event in August, face-to-face, in Orange County, California. So stay tuned for that. Sign up on meetup.com if you have not, and you'll get the automatic invite to the next event. That's meetup.com. And you can stay tuned on our next events, face-to-face events, as well as webinars. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Alex, any closing thoughts?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity, Ray, and I really appreciate everybody's time. Feel free to reach out with any questions you may have.
Great. All right, we're going to go ahead and shut it down. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your lunch hour, or if you're in different areas of the world, have a good night, and take care.